Double, triple, ultra, monster kill.
Greetings from Pintpot. Welcome to my latest episode of Climbing the Curve. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the deployment shield, which is the new defense slot option on the Sunderer. I'll take a look at how it works and whether or not you should be using it rather than the old default option, the blockade armor. Now there are 4 ranks to the deployment shield, and these cost 50, 100, 200 and 500 certs respectively. They do not increase the strength of the shield, but they decrease the time it takes to regen from 10 seconds to 6 seconds, and this makes a big difference, as I'll explain later. Now in terms of visual cues you get when the Sunderer is using the shield, when it deploys you get a brief flash around the Sunderer which indicates the shield is up. When the Sunderer with the shield up receives damage, you get a coloured effect according to your faction. And you get this flashing effect when the shield is finally broken. Again, there's a very brief animation when the shield starts recharging itself. Now there are 2 important things to remember about the shield. Firstly, when you deploy, it does not start off at max strength, so if it gets attacked very quickly, the Sunderer will receive more damage than it would with the full shield up. Also, if a Sunderer receives damage before it deploys, even if it deploys subsequently, its shield will not start regenerating until the full timer has expired. In other words, 6 seconds at max rank and 10 seconds at rank 1. And this has the important gameplay consequence that you cannot rush a Sunderer with the deployment shield into combat and then deploy it to rescue it. Therefore, using the shield in a very aggressive manner is not a viable technique. Now the shield doesn't work in the same way as an infantryman's shield works, being able to take say 500 damage or whatever the equivalent is for a Sunderer. Rather, its damage absorption is orientated around absorbing huge amounts of spike damage but is vulnerable to sustained damage. So here for example I'm putting down 5 tank mines to destroy this Sunderer. And as you can see it does very limited damage to its HP. The same applies when using 4 bricks of C4, which even with the fully upgraded blockade Sunderer would one-shot it. So in other words, the shield is extremely resilient to very high spike damage. However, if I pace out the attacks, you can see that the first 2 tank mines or C4 do no damage, but the third one actually starts breaking into the HP of a Sunderer. And with the default rocket from a heavy assault, it takes 3 shots to break the shield. What does this mean in practice? It means a heavy assault carrying C4 or an engineer carrying 5 tank mines can still destroy the Sunderer if they take long enough over the kill. For the heavy assault, it's 3 rockets to break the shield, 2 C4 to bring it down to being on fire, and then a single rocket to finish it off. For the engineer, it's 3 tank mines to break the shield, then 2 tank mines together to kill it. However, if there's any delay in the attack and the shield starts regenerating, you have to start the process all over again, breaking the shield. The total regen time for the shield from nothing to full is very short, even though there's no visual indication of what this is, even inside the HUD of a Sunderer. But as far as I can tell, it only takes say 3 or 4 seconds to fully regenerate. And given how resilient the shield is to spike damage, even if you try and blast the Sunderer just after the shield starts regenerating with C4 and an anti-tank mine, it won't receive a lot of damage. The other big difference when attacking a deployment Sunderer is the amount of time you end up being exposed when trying to launch the attack. Each time you use a brick of C4 or a tank mine and then set it off, it will take say about 3 to 4 seconds. You need to do this 3 times even to get through the shield. Then you need a subsequent attack to destroy the Sunderer. For the heavy assault it requires 3 rockets, which is 9 seconds. And that's before you even started damaging the Sunderer itself. So in other words, if you're trying to solo an enemy Sunderer, it leaves you exposed for a prolonged period of time to the defenders trying to kill you. So the shield is a specific counter to infantry soloing Sunderers. However, against protracted attacks by multiple enemies, the shield is unlikely to be able to go back up, and so the Sunderer is vulnerable. Well, one implication is that weapons which do sustained but low damage are much more effective against the shield than those that do high damage with a long drag between each attack. So it takes 30 rounds from a Basilisk to break the shield, or 5.1 seconds of firing. For the heat gun on the Vanguard, it takes 3 shots, which is 8 seconds of reload time. So quicker, more low damage attacks are more efficient when taking down the shield. They also have the advantage that any attack which does damage stops the shield regenerating once it's down. But if you're attacking with a rocket launcher or a gun on a tank that takes a long time to reload, such as the Vanguard's weapons, there's a chance that if you don't get on your shot quickly, the shield will start regenerating before you hit it again. And this ties in with why the upgrades to the shield are actually very powerful. If you're a heavy assault using a rocket launcher, with your 4.5 second reload time on it, it only gives you 1.5 seconds to make sure you hit it again before the shield starts regenerating at max level. So if you're at all delayed by enemy infantry firing at you, then the chances are your next rocket will be wasted once again trying to take the shield down. Similarly with tanks, if they're disturbed when trying to attack the Sunderer and have to retreat briefly, then again they suffer the problem that the shield will be back up, wasting further shots. Therefore, any quick firing weapon which can do any sort of damage against the Sunderer is useful in stopping the regen. So weapons such as the Basilisk and the Vulcan are good against the new Sunderers, and the Halberd not so much. Now one thing I've noticed from this is it makes the Sunderer quite an effective anti-aircraft platform using the deployment shield. Aircraft damage tends to be very spiky and high damage. But with double AA guns and the shield up, as you can see here, the rocket pods effectively do no damage. By the time the ESF comes around for another round, the shield will be back up to its full health. Therefore, provided you have an anti-aircraft deterrent around the Sunderer, it is much less vulnerable to planes than it was before. So the two big questions are, how does this affect the metagame, and is blockade armor actually that useful any longer? So I'll deal with the blockade armor question first. My previous advice to newer players was always pick up the early upgrades on blockade armor, as it made you much less vulnerable to C4. Now I'd ditch that advice and go with the shield definitely. This is because, certainly for newer players, the primary purpose of running a Sunderer is to set up a deploy spot. And given the fact that at rank 1 the deploy shield has its full strength, just a slower recharge time, relative to the blockade armor where it only really comes onto its own at rank 3 or rank 4, it's a much cheaper and more effective option just going for the deploy shield as a newer player. However, for Sunderers which are going to be under continuous attack and require constant healing by multiple engineers, i.e. a Sunderer protected by an organised group, blockade armour is the stronger option. This is because in high population areas where you've got a lot of people attacking it, the shield will never have the opportunity to go back up, but you always get the full effect from the blockade armour. There is a very noticeable difference between your ability to keep up blockade armour Sundy versus one with just the deploy shield. And for battle Sunderers, blockade armour is clearly the better choice. However, given the fact it only really comes into its own at rank 3 and rank 4, again this isn't such a great option for newer players. Now in terms of the metagame implication of this, I think it's going to make a substantive difference to the resilience of attacks against enemy bases. It also means that it's much more rewarding defending a Sunderer, as your opportunities to kill enemy players will be much greater. This is because two tactics in particular tended to kill Sunderers before you could effectively defend them. The first of these is that engineers used to sneak up and put tank mines underneath a Sunderer, instantly destroying them, and it was very hard to counter for the gunners as you were often disturbed or distracted by other things on the battlefield. The second tactic, which was extremely difficult to counter, was galaxies just endlessly dropping groups of people on top of the Sunderer and instantly destroying them. Then they would just respawn back into the galaxy and do it all over again, making Sunderers effectively, unless they were in a building, indefensible. With the shield up, even if the attackers from the galaxy managed to get 3 or 4 explosive devices off on the Sunderer, it should still survive. This means that you buy yourself at least 5 or 6 seconds to counter the attack and kill all of the infantry attacking your Sunderer. In other words, it gives you a chance to fight back, whereas previously you really didn't have that. Therefore, it's going to take a much more prolonged or concerted effort to take out enemy Sunderers rather than being able to ninja destroy them as most people do at the moment. However, one potential consequence of the metagame is that in attacks against small bases, a Sunderer, especially if a protected Sunderer, is effectively going to be unkillable if there's only a few people attacking the Sunderer. However, given the fact you can pull lightnings from any base now, I don't see this as being a huge problem, because if infantry can't take out such a Sunderer, at least you can pull a lightning and put it under sustained bombardment. So, in conclusion, for lower population fights, I think a shield is superior on a Sunderer to blockade armor. With blockade armor coming really into its own when you have multiple engineers constantly repairing the Sunderer, which is under sustained attack. For support Sunderers, the shield is superior in my opinion, as it stops enemy infantry being able to solo them. Killing Sundies will require much of a concerted effort and make them much more defensible. And I think in balance this will be very positive for the metagame, because it's far too easy at the moment to shut down attacks against bases by just ninja destroying the Sunderers. If you found this episode interesting or useful, please feel free to thumbs up, thumbs down, subscribe or comment as appropriate. In the meantime, have a good one, happy hunting and Pintpot out.